Good afternoon or early evening for those of you that are joining us. Welcome to our webinar today with David Troxel. My name is Angie France. I'm with Prestige Senior Living. We are so grateful to have you with us this evening. Just ask that throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, that you would please put your questions either in the Q&A or in the chat box, and David will be happy to answer any of those questions at the end of the webinar. I do want to let you know that Prestige serves many communities, 43 communities up and down the West Coast. We have 20 communities with memory care, our expressions neighborhoods. And those neighborhoods are such a valued part of the business that we do, the life that we lead with our residents to promote dignity and well-being in memory care. And so we hope that throughout this webinar, you'll hear some of the key components and product and program that happens within our expressions neighborhoods, as well as assisted living. Many people who have memory care needs, they may start out in an assisted living or an independent living and then maybe make that transition into memory care if needed for safety reasons. But we are grateful to be able to provide so many resources to you through our website at prestigecare.com and through many people like David Troxel, who's joining us today. David is a beloved friend and colleague and consultant for Prestige for many years. He helped us back in 2009 to develop our Expressions product and programming that really is not only just to enhance the lives of our residents and their loved ones, but also to make sure that our staff members are well prepared to take care of folks who have a dementia diagnosis. And we know that there's a little bit of extra care and redirection that goes in place sometimes when someone has a diagnosis of dementia. And so, David, we are so grateful to have you with us today to be able to share some of your knowledge and also just some of the really great tips and pointers you have as we walk through the process of looking at memory care for our loved ones and some of those questions or scenarios that come up that maybe stop us in our tracks a little bit. And so we're really glad to have you with us today to really share your heart, but also your expertise on this subject. So thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure, Angie, and I want to thank you and my friends at Prestige Senior Living for hosting this webinar. I was reflecting with some friends recently about my career in Alzheimer's and dementia care, and a group of us were together at a conference, many of us who'd been in this field for many, many years, and we agreed that you truly meet the best people in this field, such people with such caring hearts and energy and love of people living with dementia and care and commitment to creating a culture of care. Angie, you are one of those. It's always a pleasure to present with you and hear some of your ideas. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll jump in. I think Angie's advancing my slides today because of some tech issues, and so thanks for your help there.
Gonna start it here.
I think you can go to the bottom. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. That will work.
We will start it from the beginning. Here we go. All right.
Thank you, Angie. I have a blank screen at my end. Can you see the slide?
I can. Taylor, are you able to see the slide?
Maybe back out and try again and open the presentation.
Yes, I was unable to as well. Maybe
Okay.
just a refresh.
Yep, let me try it again here. Hold on.
We always laugh the joys of having done this for so many years. And just today I did another webinar, and they're still a bit devilish.
All right, let me see if this works for us. Are you able to see it
There
now?
you go.
Okay.
I'm in business. Taylor, you're good?
Excellent.
Yep,
Great.
good on my end.
Again, so one of our goals today was to talk about how you consider memory care as an option for your family member, be it moving from a independent or assisted living to a senior living memory care, or to choose to move from your home into memory care. What I want to mention to you is that even though we have this fairly narrow topic, there's a lot of rich and good information for you, whatever your situation as a family member or a professional care partner. So we want to welcome you to today's class. Next slide. Thank you, Angie. So my introduction, I'm going to keep it very brief. I'm known, along with my wonderful colleague, Virginia Bell, as the creator or co-creator of the Best Friends approach to dementia care. I've had a long career with the Alzheimer's Association, university settings, nonprofits. The last 15 years or so, I've had a consulting practice that helps organizations with memory care, do a lot of writing and speaking. And currently I'm involved with a number of activities and groups. I'll mention just one, Alzheimer's Disease International, where I serve on an accreditation panel. And Angie and Prestige have been very supportive of this worldwide effort to conquer Alzheimer's with their support of Alzheimer's Disease International. Next slide, Angie. I'd invite you to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angie France. I am the Expressions Product Manager with Prestige. I've been with Prestige for almost 14 years, starting out as a caregiver with taking care of many of our residents in memory care, and just found that that was my passion. It developed 14 years ago, and I have never turned back. It's been such a joy to work with Prestige all these years and to serve our residents and their families and really build relationships and have touch points. And getting to know not only our residents, but families through life story and the many adventures that you've had in life with your loved one has been certainly a theme of my own life. And I was recently certified as a master trainer in the Best Friends approach by David and his team. And so we're grateful to have that acknowledgement with Prestige as well. Thanks, David.
You're welcome. Next slide. Thank you, Angie. So today we're going to offer a discussion about key factors in decision-making for families considering a move to memory care. We will share ideas and hopefully have a robust discussion about how to make the move, how to talk to the person about it, how to do it. We'll describe some key elements of excellent memory care, which I hope will be helpful for you, even thinking about any assisted living move or day center care or getting an in-home helper. Again, our goal with this webinar is to be of service to everyone listening. I'll talk briefly, along with Angie, about some of the safety features, why we want to choose memory care and find a more protective space for some people with dementia, particularly in this world where we see a lot of financial abuse and fraud going on. Talk about staff and their involvement in activities, and also about how to visit a family member. Next slide. Thank you, Angie. So one of the things I want to say in general, which is a bit humbling for many of us who've been in this field a long time, is that there's not necessarily one answer for everybody. Just like we know that people with Alzheimer's disease and these other dementias, in many ways, they're all unique individuals. I always say that when you've met one person with dementia, you've kind of met one person with dementia, because everyone has unique strengths, unique history, social history. Whatever works for one person may not work for the next. This is one reason why I know Prestige and other more sophisticated providers really use strength-based assessments to kind of see what the strengths of the person are. We know that one approach won't fit all. The same thing's true with families. Some families have many children. They all live in the same geographic area. They have lots of good resources. Others may really need the help of professionals because of their limited resources. But there are some commonalities. We know that Alzheimer's disease is an enormously costly, expensive, challenging disease, that people who are care partners or caregivers face emotional, physical, and financial stress. And of course, because Alzheimer's disease and these other dementias are slow and progressive, the person living with dementia, with this cognitive loss, needs more and more care as time goes by. Next slide, Angie. So a few just general pointers, because I know there are some family members on this webinar, as well as some professionals. Just in general, if you are facing a new diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, or if you're having some challenges, get your legal affairs in order. Now, this seems like it might be just a slam dunk or obvious to everybody, but when I talk with families and, talk in classes or for the Alzheimer's Association, it's amazing how many people still don't have a durable power of attorney for healthcare or financial power of attorney, or haven't really done their estate plan. Particularly if you're an individual living with dementia, or a married couple, or a couple when one person has dementia, that person will gradually lose capacity. And you don't want to be in a position where you have to do, as many of you may have even read in the recent headlines, Jay Leno, the very, very wealthy comedian out of LA, one of the richest people in the entertainment industry with his work in the Tonight Show. He recently had to have a conservatorship done for his wife living with Alzheimer's, because I gather they had not done some of these even very simple plans. You don't want to have to go to court and get a conservatorship if you can help it. So get your affairs in order. Learn all you can about dementia. There is a right way and a wrong way to be with people with dementia, to communicate with them, to plan with them. And there's some great ideas out there with my own best friends approach and support of the Alzheimer's Association that will help you with that. I'm a fan of what we often call the continuum of care. Early on, don't wait to use services. So if you're living with somebody who perhaps is in very early stages of their symptoms, this might still be a time to introduce an in-home worker part-time, utilize a great day center, and begin looking around at some of the senior living options in your community, because again, there may be that time when you have an emergency and you don't want to have to decide about making a placement in an emergency or using services. Next slide, Angie. So let's talk about some of the challenges that await people living with dementia, particularly those people living by themselves. We often think about, a family care partner, a family caregiver, but probably hundreds of thousands of elders who are having some cognitive losses live by themselves and may or may not have a good social network supporting them. So what are some of the challenges? Well, number one, medication management. So I met an adult son recently who was so frustrated. He goes every week to his mother's, apartment and fills up her pill boxes, the AM, PM, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And yet he's frustrated because he goes and there's still pills there where there shouldn't be, or things are missing. He's realized that as hard as we try, it's very hard to manage medication, particularly if someone's by themselves. A side point to that is that people with Alzheimer's and other dementia might be taking the wrong medicines at the wrong time. They may be taking supplements or over-the-counter things that aren't very, very helpful. So again, you want to be careful to be aware that this could be a challenge. Personal care, hygiene can suffer and impact health. Often people who have Alzheimer's, maybe their caregiver just can't manage it, can't get them in the shower, can't do the dental care. So eventually this can suffer. Most people with Alzheimer's disease eventually become incontinent. And this is, again, a huge challenge for family members, something that a senior living community can manage because they have a deeper bench of staff who can help. Nutrition, hydration become a concern. I like this picture here because honestly, I've done some home visits over the years and the refrigerator is full of sugar, sweet, carbs, donuts, cookies, sometimes even alcohol. It can be very difficult to maintain good nutrition. And of course, the lack of movement and exercise if someone's on their own increases fall risk. Next slide, Angie. So when we think about contemporary memory care, and this is a slide that Angie and I put in deliberately to, again, be of service to all of you on the webinar, whatever your situation is around placement right now. How do we help people live the best life that they can live when they have dementia? Well, this slide is a great answer. We want to, of course, keep them socially engaged, keep them active and in community. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we also want to keep them healthy. So Dr. Michael McLeod, who's a retired geriatrician from the UC Davis Alzheimer's Center, someone I admire who's done excellent work, he had a great concept at a conference, and I asked him if I could use his slide, and he said yes. Basically, that Alzheimer's or dementia don't travel alone. And what he means by that is that Alzheimer's disease and these other dementias often come with other challenges that are actually treatable. But if we miss them, if we leave them untreated, they worsen impairment. So if you look on the right, these are all things that can be fellow travelers with dementia. Again, we've mentioned inappropriate medications, alcohol, stroke, depression, pain, malnutrition, hormone deficiencies or issues like thyroid issues, blood sugar, diabetes. There's a lot of research going on right now about the link between diabetes as a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. And it does appear that people who have uncontrolled diabetes or high blood sugar levels, that they actually have a greater chance of getting Alzheimer's or at least having some cognitive issues. Hearing, visual impairments, some fascinating research out there that people who need hearing aids but don't get them, they actually are at greater risk for Alzheimer's than people who have good hearing. Maybe it's somehow that lack of stimulation to the brain. Again, visual impairments, this one is very simple, but Certainly working in senior living, sometimes you see people wearing someone else's glasses or their glasses are dirty. You want to always make sure mom's glasses are clean. B12, D deficiencies, sleep issues. This is one that I struggle with, but it turns out it's very, very good for the brain to get that 8 or 9 hours of sleep a night. It just seems to almost kind of clean out our system. And for those of us like me who probably get more like 6 or 7 hours, that's not a good thing. I'm working on it. And of course, I mentioned hearing and vision issues. And then good for Dr. McLeod, which most physicians don't seem to get, the role of loneliness and isolation. Again, really can be very heartbreaking. Angie, I'm going to stay in this slide just another minute and talk about those two symptoms on the right, or two situations on the right that are in yellow. Depression. Depression has a very interesting history when it comes to Alzheimer's disease. There's actually research dating back to 1952 that people with long histories of untreated clinical depression are at greater risk for cognitive disease later in life. The Alzheimer's Association, if you look at their website, they say that 40% of people with Alzheimer's disease will experience depression during their course of illness. So it's very important if you're a family member or if you work in the field to keep your eyes open for depression, because when someone's depressed, it just drags down performance and everything else. We don't want to have dementia and depression if we can all help it. So how do you treat depression? Well, from a kind of non-pharmacological approach, you want to keep people active and busy, get them out in sunshine on a nice day, give them productive things to do, pet therapy, music therapy, purpose, fun, engagement, friendship, all of those things can help. If they aren't working, the antidepressant medications aren't too bad in our elders and can be effective. Pain. If I get a bad toothache, I have the wherewithal to understand what's going on and make an appointment with my dentist and hopefully get in very quickly. But when someone has Alzheimer's, they may experience the pain, but not be able to kind of name it and make a game plan to address it. So again, pain can be something that's often underreported, which is very, very tough. One rule of thumb that I think I recommend to all of you, or I do recommend to all of you, is to remember that dementia in many ways is like a slow and lazy river. And so if you have a sudden change of behavior with your mother, father, or a resident, or whoever you're working with, a sudden change doesn't mean that they've gone into some new stage of Alzheimer's last night at midnight. It means that they're sick, they have a UTI, or something else is going on. So again, a very helpful slide to remind us we want to do everything we can to keep the person physically healthy. Thank you, Angie. Next slide. So again, kind of recapping a little bit, particularly when someone lives alone, we want to remember that it's important for them to have some social engagement. There's actually an evidence base now that socialization and activity are good for the brain and good for the body. People who have friends, people who sing in the church choir, people who have hobbies, who are out and about, who are at Starbucks drinking coffee, talking to the person next to them, they might actually get Alzheimer's disease later in life than the loners. And if you have Alzheimer's and you're social, it actually may slow the disease down. Again, isolation, loneliness, depression are known enemies of the brain, and the person can become increasingly isolated. Basically, not even thinking about safety considerations, we really are hoping that someone who has Alzheimer's isn't just living by themselves, that we can introduce services in the home or get them into a lively and positive residential care community. Next slide. Safety. This is probably one of the #1 reasons people do choose senior living. All sorts of things can happen when someone is living alone. A dear friend of mine, Betsy, who lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, she had early Alzheimer's, was living by herself. She gets that bogus phone call from the IRS and she wired $10,000 to who knows where. Of course, it was gone forever. Again, judgment becomes impaired. So if you look at this disease and our worries about someone living alone, is that money management becomes a concern, financial abuse, fraud, inappropriate gifts or loans. And I hate to say it, Angie, and for those of you listening, I'm sure many of you will nod your heads, but sadly, it's not always the stranger committing crimes. It can be a family member, an adult child who's had challenges. But basically, people with dementia often make significant mistakes or do things they never would have done before the dementia. Memory loss and poor judgment can lead to also to accidents and safety concerns, bathtub overflow, stove being left on, all of these things here. And of course, dangerous exit seeking. I know many of you are on this webinar from all parts of the Western United States or elsewhere. It can be a snowstorm and someone could think they're late for work and they want to leave the house. And sadly, many people do get into big trouble or even are killed by unsafe exit seeking when they're confused and go out the door. Next slide. Now, we've talked a bit about the person living alone. What about the person living with a supportive family? Well, this can be comforting and rewarding for families to provide loving support. But as I said earlier, over time, the job gets tougher. Caregiver burnout is common. We face exhaustion, loss of our own social connections, and fear of the future. The average length of illness, or pardon me, the average length of life after a diagnosis is about 8 years. But with Alzheimer's disease, we never know. And there are some people who go through this journey and maybe pass away in 3 or 4 years. There are others who can live with dementia for 10 or 20 years. So it's a very tough road to follow. Next slide. On top of everything else, we know that there can be significant dementia-related behavior. Now, one of the things Angie and I teach our staff about at Prestige, as well as in public talks, is that we need to remember that people with Alzheimer's disease or other dementias, they're not violent or aggressive. They're not, you have people who are pleasantly confused or people who do have challenges. But when you have a disease where you don't always know where you are, what's happening around you, you can be prone to frustration, denial, confusion. Things can go wrong in a hurry. So with dementia-related behavior, someone might refuse to do personal care or showers. They don't have that self-awareness or wherewithal. They may think they had a shower. They may not trust you who wants to give them the shower. Again, paranoia. Maybe someone is a bit paranoid. They hide their purse under the pillow. I come in to visit my mom. I leave. She can't find the purse. She doesn't remember that she hid it. She believes it was on her sofa when I got there and now it isn't. So she may think that I'm stealing her purse. Apathy. I've had caregivers jokingly say, I wish my father was apathetic and not doing more. He's on the go all the time. But it can be very stressful when someone doesn't want to leave the house, doesn't want to do anything, particularly when you are partnered with that person. So apathy becomes a big issue. Aggression, of course, can be there. Delusions, fixed false ideas, or even hiding things, hoarding things, rearranging household items. So there are a lot of behaviors that, again, many caregivers are just not able to cope with. And this is why sometimes having a team on your side, particularly in senior living, can be a huge advantage. Next slide. This is just a memory I have from my days living in San Luis Obispo, working for a nonprofit there, where we had a lovely daughter who lived in Morro Bay, and her mother was living with her. The daughter, by all accounts, was ethical and concerned and quit her job and supporting her mother. Well, the mother was paranoid and didn't really understand why her daughter was living in, didn't really understand why her daughter was handling her money. So the the mother would write notes and she'd have them in her pocket. And the postman would come, or she'd be at the grocery store with her daughter, or someone would come by, and these notes would say, call the police, I'm being held hostage, my daughter has stolen my money. And, this resulted in lots of police visits and investigations. But, we can be a bit humorous about it. The daughter was always exonerated, but the daughter said it was very stressful. And there were neighbors who believed that she was a villain. And so it caused a lot of stress for her when these things happened, even though the daughter had, really scripted a response. I think she even got a letter from the mother's physician saying the mother had Alzheimer's and was delusional. You can see how something as simple as this could cause a lot of concern. Next slide, Angie. So ultimately, some of you on this call have a lot of resources, some of you don't, but what will ultimately sink even the best care partner? Lack of sleep, doing the work of personal care, and becoming the bad guy. I've often said when I'm in support groups, how many of you here become the bad guy with your family member? And probably a third to 2/3 raise their hands. And when we think about it, there's a reason. We're the ones sort of saying no. We're the ones making decisions. That person with dementia may not even really have an awareness that anything is wrong. In my books about the best friends approach, we do a lot of writing and presenting about how not to become the bad guy, how we can develop something called caregiving knack, how we can blame the physician and not argue and correct and kind of picking your battles. We can certainly tell you more about that in future webinars, but basically sometimes relationships do break down. And I've been in situations, I mean, quite candidly and being very serious, where I almost worry about the caregiver's safety because the person with dementia has gotten so paranoid and agitated. I worry that they, if I think someone's trying to harm me, I might pick up a lamp and hit them over the head. And these are things that can happen. So if you're a daughter or daughter-in-law or a family member where you really have been so bruised and battered, I think it can be powerful to take a break, even if, and maybe Angie can say more about this later, even if you just choose a respite stay for a month or two at a senior living community, because again, you want to break this dynamic and try not to be the villain of the piece. Next slide. Other tipping points, again, dangerous behaviors, threats, unsafe exit seeking. And if you're feeling a sense of hopelessness, burnout, fatigue, inability to work, or estrangements within the family over care issues, I recommend, by the way, we don't have a slide on it, but there's a field that's been out there for 20 or 30 years now called geriatric care managers. And if your town has one, they're often social workers or nurses. They can come in, do an assessment, give you recommendations. And if they come in and they say mother needs to be in a memory care neighborhood, you see, they're the ones who are expertly making this recommendation. So it's not you doing this to maybe agitating your siblings or agitating your family members. It's an expert who says, I think it's time. You really can't sustain the situation at home. Next slide. So again, how can assisted living and memory care help? Your family member now has a support team, well-trained in dementia care. We have healthcare management and monitoring, and staff can do a lot of the heavy lifting around personal care. Your family member benefits from a therapeutic environment, an environment that's healing. This social, to use a fancy word, milieu or environment with friends and neighborhoods evokes old social skills and manners. It's surprising, by the way, how successful memory care can be. Many residents will do things that the families never thought they would do. Perhaps it's a Tai Chi class. Maybe they're going to a night at the opera, doing things they never would have done before. But there's something about that power of being with friends and socialization that can kind of raise our energy and kind of help us want to feel more a part of this caring neighborhood. Next slide. So I'm going to ask Angie to step in now and talk a bit about Prestige's award-winning program Expressions, and also give you some ideas about what you need to look for if you're considering senior living. Angie?
Thank you, David. And you have always been a champion of engagement when you have worked with us, and we have seen the differences. And I know when I started almost 14 years ago that the Expressions Memory Care Program was just rolling out, and my own mother-in-law was a part of the community that I was working in. And I really wasn't sure about the difference that this was going to make. And to be able to see the person with dementia come out in ways that we never expect, in ways that conversation is created, the ways that they react to different types of music. I know with residents who maybe speak what we call word salad, where it's really difficult to understand, just seeing what music can do to bring out joy, to bring out memories with reminiscing. But also to help them even to verbally sing along with songs that are still residing in the brain somewhere. And so we look at things like music as being something that's very important to our residents. And so we really try to highlight that in our communities. We find out their favorite songs, their favorite singing groups or singers, and really try to maybe genre of music as well. And then arts. There's something, David, I know you realize this too, with so many folks that have been diagnosed with dementia. Sometimes there are areas of artistic abilities that come out in dementia that were not there previously. And so we really discover some new talents when they try some new opportunities for artistic work. And we have even had communities who have residents who have painted beautiful pictures, and they said, I didn't even know my mom or dad knew how to paint. But we've been able to frame them and send them out to like a local county fair for blue ribbons and things like that. We look at art as being a part of who this person is. And a lot of times we find with families too that they know mom or dad as they were raised with, but they don't always remember or know about the things that happened before maybe they were born to their parents. And so maybe they were engaged in these types of things. Certainly, conversation with others, good tasting food. We really try to focus on some of the tastes for our residents and find those foods that we all enjoy we build memories around for celebrations. Trivia and learning to keep the mind active, slow down cognitive decline is very important in that. Exercise, there are so many more studies today that show about the value of exercise and physical movement to slow down cognitive decline. We have some wonderful opportunities within our communities with a program called Ageless Grace. And it's a seated exercise program that's done to music where our residents participate and they move their body in unexpected ways, but in a safe way. And so they believe that with this type of movement, when it's something that's kind of outside the box, unexpected, it opens up those neural pathways in the brain to give better clarity and slow down that cognitive decline. So we celebrate exercise and movement, whether you're able to walk and ambulate easily throughout a space, or maybe you're in a wheelchair or walking with a walker. We know there's always opportunities for exercise, and dancing is another one of those that goes along with music. We love to dance. Also, time spent outdoors. David mentioned this as well, and the importance of getting some sunshine, that vitamin D, but breathing in fresh air throughout the day. And it does really give clarity of thought. And it's important to have really good outdoor spaces. If you're searching, for an assisted living or a memory care, check out those outdoor spaces. We like to call them secured areas. Areas that are safe for our residents, that they're not going to wander. But also we have a lot of communities with raised garden beds. We find that's a really spiritual importance to them of getting outside in nature and getting their hands in the dirt. And then activities tied to your family member's life story and history. And that's certainly a very important part of reminiscing and getting to know who this resident is that we're serving. One of the key elements of our Expressions Memory Care program and product is the life story work. And we received a wonderful award for that back in 2012 with the International Council on Active Aging for its innovation. And there are many senior living communities these days who use life story, but David really worked with us at a time when we were developing this, and it was such a differentiator in the marketplace and for families as they brought their loved ones to us. And it's kind of a healing process too when you're working through life story regarding your loved one and remembering some of those key parts of growing up, and we talk about the stories of our family members and where they were raised and what was their schooling like and what were their adventures that they did in life. Maybe they were in military service or they have a particular faith-based upbringing, but also their careers and how they raised their families. And it's really wonderful to be able to share history with all of the different generations in your family. We find that it really affects our residents, and they go back to those old thoughts. And I've taken care of some residents whose families said, well, they had no religious upbringing, but then as their memory declines, to be sitting in a situation where there's a Bible study going on or some hymn singing, and they know every word verbatim. Those moments are like a light bulb going off for us when we hear those types of things. And so we really utilize life story for also not just engagement, for all of our community members to really get to know this resident, for redirection if they're having a tough day. Also for our health services team, when they know certain things about a loved one and they can put those as part of their service plan and to really make it personalized, that helps in what we do. We certainly want to use creative activity and socialization, as David's been talking about today, and the importance of that, and building friendships and building relationships with others and helping them to know that there's someone there sitting alongside them and helps them feel safe and secure. And also finding ways to still continue to help them feel valued and purposeful through events that we do and activities that we do with them. We find that those things are very important. I just saw one of our communities, they were harvesting some lavender this last week out of their garden. And the residents were sitting around making lavender sachets. And so little things like that, the scent, the touch, the taste of foods, all of those senses that are involved in life are still very involved in a dignified life with our residents in memory care. And we want to make sure that those are highly valued and work with them on those. David, I'll hand it back to you if you'd like to tackle this slide.
Sure, Angie, thank you. So a few other special considerations. I know some of you may have a family member or maybe even yourself might be living in independent or assisted living, and perhaps the community's care committee has said, I think it's time to transition into memory care. So what is the difference between memory care and assisted living memory care? Well, part of it can be a licensing issue. We don't actually have that on the slide, but in many states, if you've been diagnosed formally with Alzheimer's disease and you're living in senior living, the state even may demand that you live in more of a protected, safe, secure memory care neighborhood versus part of the building where someone could, exit seek at 2 a.m. But overall, the main differences are safety systems. Again, to reduce the risk of unsafe exit seeking, a memory care community often has a door pad where you have to put in a code, or where, again, the staff would know if someone's trying to leave. Specialized staff training. Memory care neighborhoods give their staff additional training and more training in dementia care. Staff providing added cues and encouragement for resident activity and engagement. In a normal independent assisted living building, we expect a resident can kind of navigate the space and choose activities, go to meals. In a memory care neighborhood, someone's hopefully knocking on the door and cueing people and inviting somebody, saying, hey, we have an art class right now. I know you were a high school art teacher. You love your art projects. We have a special chair saved just for you. Please come. So that kind of encourages that get up and go and fights apathy. And of course, in memory care, the activities have a little bit of a different flavor. We don't have to have necessarily a beginning, middle, and end. Maybe if you're even calling bingo, you can stop and sing happy birthday midday or look at the hummingbirds out the window. If you're doing a special project around gardening and the residents would rather sing some music or play some music on the patio, that can be okay too. So again, some specialized activity, specialized staff training. Memory care definitely has some different kind of standards than normal assisted living or independent living. Thank you, Angie. Next slide. So I just thought I'd kind of begin to bring this together because families are often so afraid of memory care, and just tell you a story that I think will kind of give you a flavor of how it can work. Here's a testimonial from Margaret from some work I did. When my mom lived in her independent living apartment, she was happy. But as her memory began to fail, she struggled to communicate with other residents and had trouble ordering off the menu. Now in memory care, she seems happier and less stressed. The staff is there to help her. She seems more at peace in this smaller, well-lit, and comfortable environment. She's a retired nurse, and I like the fact that they call her Nurse Joyce. That perks her up. After all, I think I remember her saying to me once a nurse, always a nurse. I was so afraid it wouldn't work, but mom is happy, and I don't have the constant struggles with her anymore about taking a shower or changing. We are having more fun as mother and, forgive my typer, mother and daughter. So again, the idea that memory care can be surprisingly effective. Thank you, Angie. Next slide. So making the move, this is such a tough one. But believe it or not, it does happen. It works. And often things go much better than you ever feared they would go. Again, no single answer. This is really my view and Angie's view, but you may have your own path. But I like to, whenever possible, particularly if someone still has some decent cognition, maybe they can still talk with you and discuss things. I tend to start with the truth, sharing your concerns. Mom, I don't think it's working very well for you to be at home. You've had a couple falls. The house has a lot of steps. The doctor feels that you need to begin thinking about making a move, and we need to get you some more help. Again, floating that trial balloon, often it gets popped and crashes and burns, but I think it's still good from an ethical perspective, when possible, to kind of put it out there and see how things go. Keep it simple. I had a family one time who prepared a elaborate PowerPoint about, here are the 27 reasons you should move to memory care. When you have dementia, one of the symptoms is again, that inability to plan and reason, the judgment. So someone can't do it the way they always did. If you're a husband and wife, maybe you're used to making all the joint decisions together, but now that becomes increasingly difficult due to the symptoms of dementia. So keep it simple, try not to argue. keep it, keep it in a simple way. Here are some reasons I think we need to consider this. Blame the doctor. Forgive me, any of the doctors on the call today. But, again, sometimes it really does help to bring in a figure of authority. Mother, the doctor wants you to be here right now. You need to build your strength. Okay. Sometimes you may need to wait for the inevitable emergency health crisis before making a move, but make your game plan so that when you are ready, you are ready to act when needed. So I'll tell you a quick story about my own parents. I'm an only child. My mom passed away in 2008 with Alzheimer's. She was actually lived in memory care for 3 years. My father passed away in 2012. Wonderful parents. I was very lucky to have them. Well, like a lot of parents and a lot of people, they were very independent. My mother developed Alzheimer's disease and she was doing pretty well, but my father was very resistant to in-home help. Well, I fought it out the best I could in a gentle way, but I finally realized I've got to just stop. I don't want to cause estrangement. So I began to kind of covertly look around the neighborhood. I found a lovely lady named Rosita, funny enough, from Germany. Rosita actually was helping some of the elders in the community. I had heard that maybe she might be getting more time in her hands because one of her clients was moving to senior living. So I talked to Rosita and said, okay, I may be calling you. My mother, a few weeks later, fell, broke her left wrist, went to the hospital. I went and talked to Rosita, hired her to come in 3 days a week for 4 hours. When my parents were in the hospital, I said, hey, mom and dad, guess what? I found this wonderful woman and dot, dot, dot. They weren't happy. They didn't like it at all. But I said, mom and dad, I've already paid her for the first month. I don't think I can get my money back. So Rosita started. And would you believe she ended up working for my family for 10 years? She actually worked for my father and helped him after my mother passed away because my father was rather frail and needed sort of someone to help him around the house. So again, this idea that sometimes it is easier to get forgiveness than permission. And if your family member is just adamant about not moving, do your homework. There will be, if someone particularly is living by themselves with dementia, there'll be an inevitable emergency. And that can be a time when you can strike and get services introduced. And if you are having issues around making the move, certainly the staff at Prestige, or I think the Alzheimer's Association as well, they have an 800 number. I'm a big fan of the association. They can give you some ideas about making the move as well. Surprisingly, again, this transition is almost always successful. Next slide.
David, I also think that
Oh.
a lot of guilt that goes along with making the move, and that transition. Sometimes, our parents have said, don't ever put me in a place or whatever, or your spouse. And, life has changed a lot since we were young, and our parents may not understand what's available to them today. And, we're that sandwich generation where we're taking care of our parents as well as children still. And it's a lot of work, and we're still trying to work full time and all of those things. And, I think that's why it's best to have a game plan. Like you said, plan ahead, because times change. And as you've said, you never meet one person with dementia is one person with dementia. And I think that's true with families as well. One family dealing with dementia is one family dealing with dementia. We all have different stressors that happen with us. And we need to thoughtfully think out those processes that we can follow.
Right. And Angie, I don't remember if we have a slide on it, but there is something called a respite stay that most buildings offer. And so if your family member is a bit reluctant, just remember that you can always move in for 1 month or have a couple weeks respite stay. Even after you've made a formal move, almost all assisted livings are month to month in the way they work things. So again, it's worth giving it a shot, and sometimes respite stays can make a difference as well.
It really is. If someone wants to go on a vacation and mom or dad or your husband is at home or your wife and you don't know what to do, respite stays are really helpful for that. To also get acquainted with the community and the staff and know if it's a place that feels right for you. I always love promoting respite stays. I think they're very beneficial.
Thank you very much. So as we begin to wind down the presentation, again, we wanted to just continue to share with you some techniques for good care. And I guess what I'd say is, even if you're a family member versus a staff member, it's very important when someone has dementia to show warmth and affection. Nonverbal communication becomes increasingly important, particularly as language gets stripped away and they have trouble with words and language. So I love this quote from Maya Angelou that I know In many ways, Prestige is adopted as a touchstone. It wasn't written for people with dementia or about people with dementia, but it's so perfect for our work. Maya wrote that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, which I think is a very, very beautiful concept. Next slide. So winding down here, what happens after you make the move? And families, I think this is an area where our field doesn't do a very good job teaching families how to make a visit. Because I've had families who move someone in and you discover they're spending 8 or 10 hours a day with the family member, which of course is their prerogative. They can do that, but it's probably not the healthiest way to approach this for your own well-being as a caregiver who's had a lot of struggles. So I always want to say, not necessarily important in order of importance. Short visits are okay. It's okay to come and say, Mom, I wanted to pop by. I'm on my way to the dentist and wanted to just say hello, or I'm on my way to a work meeting. I want to come by and say hello. Greet your family member with a smile, show of emotion, and gently introduce yourself if needed. Hey, Mom, it's me, David. Good to see you. I know who you are. Well, maybe they don't. So again, depending on that, but kind of almost like you could imagine when you're seeing an old friend who you're picking up at the airport, kind of be a little bit, theatrical in your show of emotion, because they tend to like that very much. Bring a gift or a small treat. I think that everyone loves to get a gift. So some flowers or a cupcake you've made or some fresh blueberries or strawberries. Try to spend some time outside. It's tempting just to hang out in the building, but ask the staff if they'll set up a couple of chairs with you or some lemonade under an umbrella. Spend some time outside because it's good for all of us. We get that natural vitamin D. Bring a project to work on, flowers to arrange, a present to wrap, a photo album, a scrapbook, a catalog for shopping, birthday cards to write. I used to bring dress shirts and neckties to my mother because she loved clothes. And I say, Mom, I've got a busy week at work. Would you help me match my shirts and ties? You're so good at it. Again, very helpful. Bring in some individual flowers, put the arrangement together, wrap a present, go through photo albums. I think give yourself some kind of activity. I will say that, sometimes just even your presence is a gift. And I remember when my mom was in assisted living, I would sometimes just sit in her room and, work on my laptop or do some writing of letters or pay bills. And even that, that we won't always necessarily engage 100% of the time, she just liked the fact that I was present. And then, of course, be sure to share with the staff your family members' unique history, interests, and achievements. It's very powerful for the staff to know a lot about your family member. Maybe your dad's from New Orleans. You want to let the staff know that he likes Tabasco sauce and likes jazz and he's lively and he's a night owl and all of those things. So again, the staff should know that he wants that hot sauce on his meatloaf, because that can be a huge indicator or factor of happiness to get the kind of food that you want as well. Next slide. Again, thank you very much. I think Prestige will have its website up as well, but if you need to reach me, I'm honored to be a consultant to Prestige Senior Living. I'm simply at davidtroxel@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook if you want to like that, The Best Friends Approach, and there's my website as well. I'm always happy to talk to families, get an email, discuss anything I can do to be helpful as you travel your journey. Angie, I think I'll toss it back to you to manage the Q&A or see if there are any comments or questions. Thank you very much for being part of this webinar. It's always fun to present with you, Angie.
Thanks, David. I always appreciate your insight and your knowledge. It was such a benefit to all of us. We do have a couple Q&As here from Suzanne. She says, how does a family member deal with an Alzheimer's sibling who is angry and negative all the time and who speaks nasty to her sibling who is really trying to help her?
Well, one question I'd have is, what was your relationship like before dementia? It's always interesting to me to kind of look at that kind of behavioral arc. So if you've always had a contentious relationship as siblings, which some siblings do, you can sort of see how that could be something that's been exacerbated by the situation. If you had a terrific relationship before, then I would really do everything you can to try to get back to that kind of baseline as well. So a couple of things I suggest. One is immodestly maybe get a copy of my book, A Dignified Life. I think many of the Prestige buildings have it. You can get a free copy from them. It has a lot of good ideas on how to be a best friend, how to be supportive of your sibling. Sometimes the best caregivers end up in trouble. We're doing so much, trying so much, but perhaps we're just not picking our battles appropriately. So I would say learn all you can about the do's and don'ts of dementia care. You may be you might find that there's some benefits about changing some of your approaches. If no matter what you're doing, you're really trying to do a great job, and there's just an incessant negativity, if at all possible, see if a nephew or niece or somebody else will kind of intervene. I used this word delusion earlier. A delusion is a fixed false idea. And sometimes, if I have dementia, I might think Angie, who maybe Angie's my sister, I might think she's someone else, or that she owes me $10,000, never paid me back, or that, she's trying to hurt me. So if that relationship is very, very tough, try to take a break from it if at all possible. So those are just a few ideas there. I guess I'll just throw one more out, actually, as I'm kind of brainstorming in my head here. If there is something you do enjoy with your sister, if there's something she likes to do with you, maybe it's taking a walk or going out for ice cream, or listening to music. Family members sometimes say there's 100 things mom won't do, but there's 3 things she will. Double down, triple down on the things that are working for you. I guess, Angie, I keep saying one more thing. I get these questions are so good. Support group. If there is a support group near you, that can be very valuable to process your feelings and get input from other family members.
And I think too, David, sometimes our family members think, well, she's just trying to manipulate me, or he's, trying to get under my skin. And, I try to educate our staff and family members too, that, with a brain that has dementia or Alzheimer's, our normal human brain is about 3 pounds, and the brain with that really atrophies. And so, at the end of life with dementia, your brain is about 1.5 pounds. And so reasoning and understanding are very diminished. And so it's always really difficult sometimes for them to form new thoughts, or to understand different things that are going on around them. Even a flickering light may cause some kind of a behavior, but we know that dementia-related behaviors are also ways that our residents communicate with us. And so it's really important to be aware of those things. And it may not always be about you. It's that kind of thought in their mind. And so
Sure.
don't take it too hard.
Yeah. And when things do go wrong, we try to remember it's the disease, not the person. All these things can be very, very helpful. Nancy, I'll just give one kind of simple example of something I heard the other day when I was at my mother-in-law's building here in Sacramento, where she's in memory care. This hits so many of us. I just thought it was so clever. I heard one of the staff members say, I could sure use some exercise. I really need to get a walk in today, and I'm feeling a bit wobbly. Would you come with me? Would you walk with me? I could sure use your support. I thought that was very nuanced and clever versus, Angie, you have to exercise, you need to walk, you need to do this. So this idea of come with me, help me, all of these things. Here is in my background, if you could see, is a collage done by a person with dementia. If you say, hey, let's do a project for the local, school, they're having an art auction, doing something for others, helping, that can be sometimes a much sort of nicer approach.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. I have a question here from Jerry. It says, in a memory care facility, what is the normal amount of caregivers per resident? And if I could say, it's really dependent on the neighborhood, the Expressions neighborhood, and depending on the level of care that is in that neighborhood of residents. We have some residents who are very cognitive still, but are just unsafe. They may be exit seeking, but other residents, they may need additional care. It may have higher acuity, maybe with some transferring. And so each community is so unique on the number of staff members who are there. We certainly want eyes on our residents all the time as possible. Not always can happen. There are emergencies that come up, and those bathroom adventures that we've all experienced. But generally, we want a team who's going to work together. They communicate together to talk to each other when they're giving care to someone else. And so that's really how we base our staffing in our communities, based on the need and the level of care that is needed for the individuals that are there. And as I said, it can range in every community. Jerry also asked, should my family member with dementia tag along to memory care facilities during the interview process?
I have to say that in many cases today, it's yes. In the past, it was untrue. I think use your own judgment. If the person's going to have a meltdown or really stress about it, that would be one thing. but often we have people visiting Prestige, coming for lunch or an ice cream social or an activity. Mom, I'm interested in this. May want to volunteer there. You can have a little bit of a finesse. Or again, if you're open, this might be a place for home with you. I think that's okay. I think if it were me, I guess, Angie, just being very, very practical, I'd probably tour it once on my own first, and then maybe the second time bring mom.
Yeah,
But it
we always
depends.
like to invite family members to, come and tour. If you do bring your loved one with you, maybe come around lunchtime, and we would love them to sit down and have lunch with our other residents and kind of interact with them. You can kind of get a vision, or during an event. Right now, we have our Not Your Grandma's Nursing Home events going in our communities for barbecues and rodeos and luau's, all that coming up in June. So anytime you can come into a community when there is an event going on or during a meal time, just to kind of see how your loved one kind of interacts with the other residents and maybe an activity that's going on, you can call ahead. Maybe there's an exercise class even, or a dance going on. We really like to see that interaction. I think it really helps families say, okay, maybe mom is that social queen that she used to be years ago and can get along with these folks. So really and it can be a multi-part process, making not just one, but 2 or 3 visits along the way to see what's best.
Angie, I think I can tackle a few of these questions very quickly and then leave one or two for you, since I know our time's winding down. My dad used to be physically active, but since his diagnosis, it's been harder to get him moving. How can I get him up and active? Well, what I say, first of all, ask your doctor for a physical therapy consult. Medicare will cover PT even for a few sessions, and they may be able to come in and give you some ideas or evaluate his movement. Occupational therapy can help as well. In general, again, you want to recognize that apathy can be there, but dad, come with me and I can use the exercise or walk, or again, try your best to, as I've heard with one training program from a company called Home Instead, try 3 times to turn a no into yes. Don't take the first no to the answer. Say, Dad, come with me. I can show. Dad, you're a master gardener. I think you need to check the roses, see if they're being pruned correctly. Keep trying, but think about the PT therapy. Is there a big difference between Alzheimer's and Lewy body dementia? Yes. The Alzheimer's Association has some great fact sheets on those, but basically Lewy body dementia feels a bit like Parkinson's. There's some movement disorders. People with Lewy body dementia often have hallucinations, either visual or hearing or smells. They can have these sort of momentary lapses in consciousness, and there are potentially some different medication strategies for Lewy body dementia. So take a look. There's even a Lewy body dementia society that can be very, very helpful. How do we know when it's time for memory care? I think we tried to cover that, but I'd say safety and socialization are 2 big things, or your own exhaustion and burnout as well. There was a question, Angie, that may have left the chat room, but I think it was something about how can they visit a Prestige community, or can they find Prestige to visit?
Yes, if you go to prestigecare.com, you can see so many things on our website. It's been updated in the last couple of years, and there's just so many advantages of this website. You'll see things like a location finder around your area. You'll see blog posts that have to do with some of the events that are happening in our communities, or just also some really good information about assisted living, memory care, dementia in general. Wonderful opportunities for engagement. There are some guides that are available to you as well that maybe you want to print off and share with your family members as you're trying to work through these decisions. There's just a plethora of great information out there, as well as copies of our calendars for each community, our activity calendars, and our newsletters for each community. So you can kind of get to know us a little bit before you make that visit. There's numbers to call for each location and addresses, so that you can know the best place to reach those people that might be able to set up a tour for you. But you can always do a walk-in tour. Those are always available to you as well. We don't mind walk-in tours. So please just stop by. If it's on the top of your mind, it's probably for a reason, and you're trying to seek out some answers, and we're happy to be the ones to help answer those for you.
Angie, one more question. What do we do about affordability? Of course, it's a huge issue, not only with senior living, but with so many things in our country today. I guess what I'd say is don't be afraid to come into the Prestige community. They often have other resources and can help you with some other referrals and ideas if you can't afford the regular senior living. Sometimes there's benefits you might be unaware of. There's a website called benefitscheckup.org run by the federal government that can look for federal benefits, et cetera. And of course, the Alzheimer's Association. There's also a statewide in California network of caregiver resource centers that you can also go to. Angie, I know our time is almost up. I'm going to toss it to you for final words. Thank you all very much for attending this workshop. And I know there'll be many more to come on various topics. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, David. And David, it's always a joy to have you with us. You always bring up just those relevant things that we're thinking about and wondering about, and always provide us such great answers. Let's see, we have a thank you here. Very good. Thank you all for being with us, asking the important questions. Once again, you can go to prestigecare.com and look at things that are available, answer any questions for you that you might have. We're grateful for you attending today. Please stay tuned to our website, our Facebook pages, because we do advertise when we're having our webinars going on, and check out some of those events that are going on right now for in our senior living and expressions neighborhoods. For the Not Your Grandma's Nursing Home, we find ways to celebrate life every day. Aging is a state of mind. It starts the day you were born. And so we really want to celebrate who we are, who you are, and who our residents are, to give them the best life possible, and to really shine the light on the advantages of aging. There may be negatives. You think dementia is a negative, but we really see it as a time in life where we can still celebrate the person. And that's what we do. So thanks for being with us today. And we look forward to you being with us again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Everybody.